back. I'm Chris Garlock, the American Go e-Journal. With me, once again, Michael Redmond, 9 Dan Professional. Michael, how you doing?
Hi, Chris.
All right. We are on to game 2 in the AlphaGo Zero versus AlphaGo Master, little mini series we're doing here. As always, before we get started, I just want to thank all our AGA members. If you'd like to support this content as well, please consider joining the American Go Association at usgo.org. So, Michael, today, game 2, the AlphaGo Zero, much anticipated, a lot of chatter out there, getting lots of comments, lots of interest. You've been looking at these games pretty seriously. What are we looking at for this game?
Well, really, in this series of games, although the openings are pretty repetitive, the games are very various, and so you'll see. In some of the games, you'll see half-point games, so very closely fought end games. And then you see some games that are just a few points win for zero. Most of the time, zero is winning, of course. And then you see Master crash a few times. This time, it's sort of interesting. It's the first time we'll be doing a game where zero has black, so that's one factor. But there's also the fact that later in the game, I get the feeling that Master is acting like it did in the 60-game series where it thought it was winning, and it was sort of closing shop, towards the end of the game. And so I'm wondering if it misread its tsume-go. So there's a little thing there that I'm not having access to the network data. I'm just sort of making guesses here, but I have the feeling, from the way that Master is playing, I have the feeling that it thought it was ahead.
Misreading is, well, I'll wait and I'll ask questions about it. That seems really unlikely, but if you say so.
It's not kind of a position that you would call it tsume-go. It's a bit more, it's like something more like 60 moves.
All right, can't wait to see it. All right, let's take a look.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun making that variation. Okay, so this is going to happen. Oh yeah, so it's the first time. I might as well tell you. Master was doing this in his training run too. It'll play a Kakari here, and it likes to play one Kakari and jump into the 3-3 point. And then when it has white, it's not allowing the Kakari. I mean, white's going to play away and jump into the 3-3 point. So white's going to play. Let's just mark up the board a little bit. But white's going to play one of these 2 points. In the AlphaGo, the 0-0 self-play, they've given us 20 games. In which it's playing itself, and this is the 40-block version playing itself, I think. And white is jumping immediately into the 3-3 points. So it's like the first person who gets to the 3-3 points is happy. But when Master plays white, well, a human would answer here too, right? This is the most natural move, I think.
Sure.
Of course, some people might play a pincer, but you would usually expect white to be playing something locally. And Master jumps in here. And this is really crazy, but actually on the internet and in some of the tournaments now, you're seeing some of the promising young players in Japan playing this, some of the strongest professionals. And so the young professionals have sort of latched onto this. For instance, they're playing it a lot against Deep Zen Go, which is the Japanese AI. And Deep Zen-go has gotten so strong now that it's winning about 95% of the games it plays.
I'm just wondering how the early invasion works out for human players. I mean, do they understand what they're doing with it?
Well, they're beginning to get some ideas. They're picking up from the zero games, and so they're using it against Zen. But it's as I say, Zen wins almost all the time anyway, so it's not really working. They have a variation of this joseki that they think Zen is going to make a mistake in, and so sometimes they use that to trick Zen. But there's
that seems like a low percentage play.
It's a low percentage play, yeah. There's one person who's actually I've seen beat Zen with this opening, and otherwise they're all losing anyway. So I don't really know. But anyway, we can see Master playing the old. Actually, in the openings video, I talked about this a little bit, and I said that the KJ, and I'm going to call it the KJ version now.
Right.
I've finally given up. Like I was trying to say it in the an authentic Chinese pronunciation, and I wasn't really managing to do it. So like it's something like Kerche or something like that. I'm just not able. I can understand some Chinese, but I can't really speak it. So I'm going to give up. And I think Americans or English speakers will understand if I say just KJ.
Fair enough.
So the KJ version in its self-played games will play this side. And
right.
we were seeing a lot of this kind of variation where white would be building on the upper side. And so this is something that we saw a lot of. And then it would be, yeah. So I would assume that this is what white would want to do, only in this case, it happens that the latter favors black.
Right.
So white would have to be working on that a little bit, maybe. But let's see what the game, this is, that it turns out we'll find that Master does sometimes play the knight's move at this point, this move here. But in this case, it just takes what you might call the human joseki. And so this is the same opening every time, only the timing of the scroll there in this position. Let's just go back. This is as far as the game repeats itself. And this scroll, sometimes Zero plays this exchange now, and in this game it played it one move earlier. So there's sometimes it changes its mind about that. And like I say, I'm really bothered by the fact that Master is playing the same opening every time. And some people have been giving me some advice, you might say, about that. And they do agree that since Master is supposed to be using the runouts, which apparently have some kind of, they have some randomness built into them usually. It means that it can play a various amount of moves. So, but I do know that they're saying that they've gotten rid of Monte Carlo in the Zero version, like it's just using one network, I think they said. And so that would be a reason for Zero to be pretty just playing the one variation for most of the opening. It would have less variety, but it still doesn't explain why Master is doing that. And I wasn't really bothered about Zero to start with,
right?
Because I don't really know what Zero's. I don't have any preconceptions about how it plays anyway. So just to, I'm afraid I'll be talking about that too much. In this position, the whole story here revolves about the fact that the left side is not very important right now with that marked white stone sticking out. So this is an example sort of what white doesn't want to do if white jumps into the 3-3 point. I'm not sure about that last move. Zero sort of likes to make double extensions from the start point, so maybe it won't play that tight move. But in any case, white's sort of building on the left side is bad. And having said that, it turns out white's playing on the left side. In this game he doesn't. So we'll talk about that more in game number 4, I think.
Right.
In which white actually plays on the left side. Actually, it's going to happen here too right now. It's interesting that white plays on the left side again, but this is the last move sort of that white is going to play for the left side. Like if black plays something like this, then white's going to be able to sort of force black towards the left side of the board. So this would be black building a wall in a bad direction.
Right.
It wouldn't be really working very well. And so that's basically the idea behind this double Kokari. It's not as if white is really trying to make something on the left side. And that sort of explains why black is playing this attachment on the left side, trying to encourage white to play a lot of moves in that area. For instance, something like this would be something like this would be an example of what black wants white to do, just to keep on building there, so that black can just add stones to the lower side area. That would be good enough for black. So also when black plays here, also if white plays this one, this is the most popular joseki. Like in a strong player or even a professional, something like 90% of the time, white's going to jump in here. But again, in this case, it's probably not so good because it's making territory in the wrong area of the board. So this would, although white can still do stuff on the lower side, it's going to be pretty cramped. So I don't like this for white.
It's just too good for black too, right? I mean, that's exactly what black wants.
This is the right direction of play for black, so it should be good for black. Yeah. And so white plays here. So locally, this is a very bad move. I wouldn't encourage people to copy this because in most cases, it's going to be a very bad move for white. It's an overplay locally.
It's so cool looking.
Well, maybe in an amateur game, your opponent would mess up too, so maybe it would work. But like it's just not going to work usually, and black plays here. Actually, there's a lot of complications that can arise from this shape. Yeah. So just since it's the first time, I think I want to go into that a little bit. The game move is this Kosumi.
I know. You realize you're encouraging all of us amateurs to just really mess around with this, right?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to take responsibility.
I said, you have warned us.
Yeah. So this is a good shape move. It's a Tesuji. Yeah. So this is the move that is sort of the recommended move. This would be like if there was a white stone closer on the side. For instance, if there was a white stone around here to start with, then this would work. Right. But in this case, white bumping against white with this black move was good. This move here, a very strong move. And white is limited to 4 liberties. So white cuts here, and we see this kind of thing happening. And now I should have marked this white group too. Yeah, these two groups both have 4 liberties. So the white group has 4 liberties, black has 4 liberties. It's white to play, but there's no way for white to fill a liberty. Like usually white would have to play a stone like this, and black would win by 1 move. So this is a semi that's going to be bad for white. And you can see the shape on the lower side is looking bad for white too. So this is just complete
game over.
Complete crash, yeah. This move is a lot more difficult. And this one, it involves a ladder. So black's going to cover here, and white's going to play a hane underneath. And now if black, let's see, what did I do? I did this one. If black covers here, white's going to cut and cut here. And this is setting up a ladder.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so the ladder would be a disaster for black. This ladder is going to work for white. It's sort of hard to read with that black stone almost in the way, but it's not going to be a ladder breaking move. So the ladder works for white. Wow. Actually, black can back away at this point and maybe take the 2 stones. And this would maybe, I don't really look like the position black has on the lower side. With the white's going to make a life on the lower side with this kind of thing. So in this case, it's not really working for black. And that capture that white has on the left is pretty good, even though it's in the wrong direction. So I sort of like this for white. So I'm going to say that instead of doing that, we're going to go back to this point. And when white plays the hane, black's just going to connect. And black is going to be alive in the corner. And white has a very low shape there, and it's not really connected at this point. So as the game progresses, white's going to have to put another stone in on the left side, and it's already very low. So I think this is good for black.
It just feels terrible. I mean, what's white accomplishing?
Well, like if white could fight strongly, then there's potential that white could be attacking black on the left. But since white is so low on the second line there, and white really needs another stone to put in very soon now, it means white's not going to be able to attack black very strongly. And which means that in reverse, it's going to mean that black can attack white on the lower side. So it is bad for white. So this is why I think that move is not going to work. I'm talking about this move here. Well, this move doesn't work to start with, and this move is the variation I was just showing. So this is the good Tsuji move. And like if black does something like this, then white's going to have much better shape in this case. Like in this case, white has this kind of stuff, which is going to cause a lot of trouble to the corner. So it's a very different story now when black is in trouble in the corner. Like that. For instance, something like this. We can see that white has a much better shape on the left side too. And black's going to struggle a little bit more in the corner. So this is good for white. So black extends down the Sarari. I think this is pretty much forced. And then white plays here. There's no way white can save the 3 stones. Like if white tries to save them, it would have to be something like this, but that would be just terrible. White doesn't have enough liberties. Oh, I should probably have black play the Atari first, though. White doesn't have enough liberties.
Yeah.
So white plays the attachment. This is a Tetsuji. Oh, sorry. This one. Yeah. And black captures the 3 stones. So locally, this is good for black. Like white's played those 3 stones and just thrown them away. But we can see that white is squeezing from the lower side. And so black has gained a lot, but it's gained, all of black's gain is on the left. Which in the, as I said in the beginning, the left side is relatively small. And so in this particular position, I'd say it's about even.
Just a small point. Is it worth it? White has one more Sente move before been throwing those away. You bother taking that or just move on? The
Atari in the center. This one.
No, just in the left-hand corner. White has one more. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That's actually not forcing.
It's not. Okay.
Yeah, it's not forcing.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Winning the semi-already.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so.
And
it's a big move. It's a big move, but in this position, it's probably not worth playing yet.
Right.
Yeah. So this attachment here. I get the feeling that Master has done it before. I can't actually remember the position, so maybe I am just dreaming about it. But it looks like the kind of thing that Master would do anyway.
Sure.
Most players would play. There's Aji if white dives in at A also. So most players would leave it for the time being. But playing this exchange here, which if black captures this with the cut or something later, it's going to be mochikomi. It's going to be losing points for white. So it's in many cases it can become a bad exchange. But by playing this exchange, white has created all sorts of forcing moves on the outside. Like moves like this or moves like this, because white has that cutting point, one side or the other. White can play an Atari and has moves like this, which will sort of work as forcing moves. And so white has made this an area where white has various forcing moves, plus the fact that actually white does still have some potential in the corner. The corner is going to be a ko if white does this. It's very difficult for black to try to kill it outright, but usually we would get something like this, and white would be able to play a double hane here. It's not an easy ko for white, but of course black does not have black doesn't have a perfect position on the outside also, because black has a cutting point there. So this is something that white can be looking at later. But usually Master likes to take a position like this and play forcing moves from the outside. So that's sort of what's going to happen in this game. It's what I would sort of expect from Master. It's the way it can throw away local positions just to get some overall potential is something that really looks good to human professionals. So it's one of the reasons that Master is so popular. So white plays the knight's move. This is a nice move. White's playing a forcing move here. And this position will occur a few times, this position in the lower left corner. Sometimes with this pincer, the black pincer stone, sometimes with a different pincer. And every time, I'm not going to like white's next move. In this game, white pushes here. And I'm going to say this is bad because it weakens the upper side. It really, I don't. But white's sort of in a dilemma here because white wants to capture that black stone on the lower side. And if white, for instance, does it immediately with something like this, then black's going to push here. Now, pushing here is a really big move too, because this is going to establish a lot of bad aji in the lower side. And so if white leaves this, something bad is going to happen there. And so that's going to be one of my commentaries actually. So I'll leave it at that point.
Okay.
We can save it for later. So because one of the games did have something like this happen. And so that's another reason for white to sort of want to push. But I'm going to say white should just play the nice move here, because this locally, as the shape is concerned, this is so much better. And black's going to get sente. Black can play on the lower side. But as the game progresses, this knight's move at A is sort of dominating the whole board, because for the time being, it's closing off the center. There's no way black's going to get through that, because because of the fact that these two stones are cutting stones. They're important stones that black cannot afford to throw away. It makes anything in this area, like for instance this attachment, but white's not going to play that yet. But anything in this area is going to sort of work towards that and threaten those two marked stones. So at the very least, this attachment is going to be forcing. But if black tries anything adventurous towards the lower side, the upper side, sorry. If black tries anything adventurous towards the upper side, white moyo, then that weakness there is going to come into play. And so white really dominates the upper side of the board now. And it's going to be much more difficult for black to jump in. So that's why I would choose this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting because throwing away those three stones is white's getting a fair amount of play out of those. I mean, it's actually pretty effective.
It's pretty effective. I'm still going to say that locally it's very bad. So locally it's a bad result that is only working in this position because the left side is relatively small.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say this is even, but I don't really want people just randomly using the joseki.
Yeah. And
it's not a joseki. It favors black, but in this position, I sort of agree that master can play it. I don't disagree with its use in this particular position. It's just this pushing move. I think this pushing move is giving white a difficult game position in every time when white plays it.
And as a professional, you're not because a joseki is something where it's an even result for both sides. And so if it's not an even result, then it really, traditionally, it wouldn't be accepted as a joseki, right?
It's not called a joseki.
Yeah.
I just remembered, like Mr. Yoto 9P, the professional player who did so many tours in America and Europe, I think.
Well beloved.
He wasn't really that good at English, but one of his favorite moves was thank you. And he would say this push was a thank you move. He would let you push there, and then you would say thank you.
He get this huge grin on his face too. I remember. Yes.
So this is a thank you move that I think was a mistake to play it.
Okay.
So I'm very strong in thinking this is better.
Yeah, I like that too.
And so white plays here, and we can see black is pincered on the lower side, but it looks sort of like white's making a territory here. But actually, all sorts of stuff is going to happen with A and B. There's a lot of ati here. And there's a number of games with similar positions, and it'll be interesting to see how Zero finds a different way to make use of it every time. So this is going to be happening again. If I do the whole set of 20 games, it's going to be happening a few times.
Okay.
And so black jumps in here. This is interesting because it agrees with the KJ version. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities in the way the KJ version and Zero use these 3/3 invasions. And this 3-space pincer is the way that the KJ version approaches this white wall. It's the same, so it's the same. It agrees with, the KJ version agrees with Zero. And it's looking at the peep at E15, the peep that I've marked. And if black plays there, and actually there was a game that Master played. You might remember there was a game that Master played, and there were two games actually in which it jumped into the 3/3 point. I think there were two that, well, 2 or 3, it depends on your opinion. There were 2 games in which it jumped into the 3/3 point, and I thought it was very early. And that's like ancient history now, because we're getting used to these. And it was something like it was jumping into the 3/3 point on the 30th move or something, but I was still thinking it was too early. So it's a different story than what is happening now. But in that game, there was a game in which it did play this pincer, and it did play that peep, that marked peep. to attack the opponent's wall. And so Master has actually done this in something similar to this. There was one case of that. And so there's a similarity there, a kind of an AlphaGo pattern that we're seeing. And this peep at the mark point is very severe. It's a very strong peep. So white plays here. And so this makes sense because white is playing in a fashion that makes it difficult for black to peep. Like if black peeps now, let's just make a variation for that too. If black peeps now, white's going to counter with this move. Actually, maybe white's going to play the Sarari first. Let's have this exchange. I don't know. I'm not really sure about that. Maybe this way. In either case, it's going to be cut off. And the upper side is probably more important than anything that might happen on the left side. And so black doesn't do that, plays a very normal move. And white is trying to split the two black groups and trying to get rid of that invasion at the mark point. So this makes sense. You might note I'm a bit surprised when it makes sense because a lot of this is hard to understand.
Yeah.
And then white jumps in here.
Whoa. Whoa.
Well, white's looking at the attachment at A and the attachment at B. So white has two, and so black's going to have to try to find a way to refute both of those moves. And there's also the fact that that Sarari on the left sometimes is forcing. I might as well mark that too. This is it's not 100% forcing, but when white does it, it's going to be a bit painful for black. So there is the possibility that white can use that to make a potential connection to this stone. So there's all sorts of aji connected to it.
So the timing is interesting. So after black plays the sort of the live shape looking
right
move,
after this move,
right after that, got to come in right away, right?
Well, it's probably good timing because black's sort of putting pressure on white too. So like if white was afraid, well, like I would be afraid about this wall. There's a peep there that looks pretty menacing. So like maybe white would be wanting to play something like this.
Sure.
And this would sort of naturally, black would be able to get rid of any bad aji inside that black's territory. It would just erase, like you would see some players play something like this, but black would be very happy to be getting that territory with no problem. So that it's a good time for white to be jumping in here just to see how black responds. Like if black answers with something like this, then maybe black can capture that stone, but at the very least white's going to get a forcing move here and it's going to be able to beat up the corner a bit. And so it's much more aggressive than just playing something like this. And so black peeps first. And white plays an attachment. And this is really a very complicated situation because white's not answering the peep either. Like I would want to cut.
Yeah.
You would want to cut, right?
I totally want to cut. I'm sure it's a bad idea, but I sure want to cut.
Well, I wasn't really sure about it. So this is going to follow. And I think black's just going to jump out here. And so the corner is live. But, at this point, black can finish off the left side white group. But the upper side is much bigger, actually. Wow. So black has to play on the upper side. And white has this forcing move here, which threatens the side group on. And so actually it turns out white can run away. Wow. And when that happens, black hasn't gotten anything out of this. Like the whole black group there on the upper side is rather weak. Doesn't have eyes. And we can see the white group is very strong. So this is sort of, just because that the jump there in the corner, after this, white has that jump in the 2-2 point, which is, it's not only attacking black, it's also making some extra eye space for white. And that's why black played away at this point instead of taking the one stone, because it wouldn't be forcing white. It would jump into the corner, and that would sort of double as a living move as well as attacking the black. And so black doesn't have as strong an attack as I originally thought. So I sort of agree with the fact that Zero is just taking the corner territory. This is a big move as far as territory is concerned. And when white does jump there, there's a lot of negative effect on the lower side area in general, as I was showing you when white ran away. So then white connects. And black still has to find a way to handle that stone on the upper side. It's still a bit troublesome. So black plays here, and white actually is getting to connect underneath. So this was, every move sort of makes sense. Like the moves that I was really questioning were the first moves in this sequence, like this peep here, and white's move before that. These are the moves that were a bit confusing. But as the sequence continues, I'm not really finding anything wrong with the moves they chose to play. So it sort of makes sense that this might happen. And the end result is, and again, I agree with white's play here. White's making two eyes, so white's made a living shape. And so this wall to start with, when black pincered it, and as I was saying to start with, this extension that black got here was already making white very weak in the upper side area. And so when black pincered against that wall, white really had to have a plan how to eventually have a living shape, because that white group in the upper left was sort of isolated. And so that's what white has accomplished here. But also we can see that the black group is, it's not 100% alive, but it's fairly strong now. Like, it's not as if it has two eyes, but for the time being, it's pretty strong. So black has accomplished, settled that group. So it's about even, I think. That fight, the general fight, was about even. And of course, white got Sente to jump in here. So that's according to plan, as far as master is concerned. And so white attaches. So this is how I sort of see master using these marked stones. It has a way of making this attachment more effective by playing that. Like, if black is going to play inside the corner, then that attachment stone is still sort of free. It's not under attack right now. So in this case, white would just play the knight's move here. And I should probably add another variation. Like this marked stone here is making a difference. Because, for instance, if black pushes through and cuts, it's forming the shape that can capture these black stones. So it's a very immediate effect of having this attachment there. And like if black plays something like this, white will extend now. And we can see that white's getting a very nice shape there on the right side. So that's what you might say is the idea behind that attachment at A. And so black pushes. So now white's going to start a fight here. And black plays an Atari. And this is a point where it gets really complicated. Like the strongest move would be to cut here.
Right.
What I think AlphaGo is going to do, what I think Zero is, its master is white, is going to go down here. And you can see there, black can capture two stones on the outside, but white's going to get the whole corner. By cutting on the second line. So that's sort of what I'm talking about, this kind of, this kind of thing. This would probably be good enough for white.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's pretty much white, And so, Zero played the honey underneath, and white connects. And this is a point where I might think of taking the corner if I was black, like this way. This way black gets the corner, and again white gets a fairly good shape on the side. So this would be, I would call it an even result, but apparently Zero didn't think it was good enough. So black plays here. And so this means that white's going to get to live in the corner. So this is, locally it's working very well for white. It's not alive, but it's a ko actually. So let's just go and, most people should know this ko. Like if you're a Don player, you should know this ko. When it's given as a tsume-go problem, there's two answers. Maybe you can tell me where black's going to play.
Just looking at it, I mean, the 2-1 is sort of jumping out to me.
2-1?
Was it S1? Looks like the shape move.
This one?
Yeah.
And then white plays here. This is going to be a great hint to one of the answers, actually. Black plays an Atari.
Of course.
White cuts.
Yeah.
And white squeezes black. Now, don't you wish that you had already played this exchange?
Yeah, the honey.
Then you'd be able to,
yeah, that would have been good,
so,
right?
Going back, what black should have done. So let's get one of the answers is this way. The
That's
Hane
yeah, the
and
Hane.
then
The
the
Hane is
tsume-go.
always there.
Yeah.
Sequence.
So this is actually a variation that I already had in. And this is going to be a ko. But you have to remember, I've marked a point there, which is where black's going to play when black wins the ko. You can see that even when black wins the ko, white's still going to have several liberties. Because that's a big nakade. It's a 4-stone nakade.
Big eye, yeah.
And if white takes that stone on the first line, white's going to have a ko on it too. So it's a lot of extra liberties. And so it's actually, when given as a life and death problem, I could sort of fiddle with the outside shape to make this the only feasible answer.
Right.
But in the actual game, actually it's better for black to play here, which is going to lead to this. The point is that if white bumps against this, then we have this position where white has no way to go after the 2 stones.
Oh, very cool. That's a cool one.
So when black plays like this, it's going to be a ko.
Right away.
So that's what's going to happen in the corner. But black didn't do that yet. Black runs out.
Of course not. Black didn't want to bother reading it.
Yeah, well, coming out is a big move. It's putting for the time being, it's attacking white on the outside.
Sure.
And I can see that 0 is sort of setting up something that's going to happen on the lower side later in the game. So this knight's move is sort of setting. Black didn't want to give white any potential squeeze. So black is moving out and taking the offensive here. And white plays here. We can see that the right side black group, if black tries, black's going to live, but it's sort of being put under pressure. So black pushes through and plays once here. Sorry about that. And so this is the ko. I've never seen anyone make the ko with this move. It's a bit unusual. Yeah. Usually white would be playing at B, but again, if black captures at A, white's going to play at B or C anyway.
Right.
And it's going to be the ko. It's going to be the same kind of ko. It might be that this move is better than that, actually, because for the time being, white is sort of putting pressure on black's side group. It doesn't really work. I can't really explain it as working in any special way, but at least it's not any worse than the usual move.
Okay.
So while I would usually play here, I don't see anything wrong. This is still going to be a ko. And so black doesn't go on with the ko, but pushes through now. And so we have this fight. And we got this trade. So this looks okay for me. It looks reasonable.
Really? Okay.
So the white stones are dead.
Yeah.
And now black and the corner is still a ko, but the value of that ko is reduced because black's already safe on the side. So it's just the white group, which is probably, let's see, it's something like 25 points. It's less than 30 points.
Yeah, it's a lot of points.
So it's a lot of territory. But for the time being, the right side area is probably more important. Because we can see that black group is starting to get into trouble. And black still has a lot of room to move out, but that upper side group that I've marked, it's not 100% alive. So like if black is doing something like this and white is doing something like that, we can see that later on it's going to get into trouble. And white has some forcing moves here too. So white's going to be attacking at least in the outside fight, and the upper side is going to be in a bit of trouble.
It looks like both groups, both black groups are, and that upper side, I think I prefer white because you've got 2 black groups that look very thin.
Yeah. So it turns out 0 didn't seem to like that idea either. So 0 is playing a kind of a defensive move on the upper side. And it looks like 0 is actually trying to throw away the right side, like so far. It looks like white's going to be able to capture that. And then 0 plays this move, which is sort of, very hard to understand, right?
I haven't a clue. I thought, I thought he was giving those away.
Think that he was giving them away.
Yeah.
And when 0 does this, if it's going to die, this is going to be terrible, right? Because white's going to be playing on the outside and killing it.
Yeah.
First of all, the first thing I want to explain is if white plays some mundane move like this, it's actually going to live. because black can play a second Hane here, this is going to be forcing against the corner. Because black can play an Atari there and get an eye in the corner. So white's going to answer that. And it turns out black's just very easily alive because black has this forcing move on the first
Oh, isn't that clever?
So this would be just terrible for white because white has invested all of that to try to kill that black group, and it didn't work. But the mistake, of course, is this move. And a move, let's just, something even, this would be bad, Suji, because black would have this forcing move. So that doesn't really work very well either. So this is the game move. And this is a nice little tesuji. It's a very nice move. And the idea is that if black does the same thing, black doesn't have that forcing move on the first line.
Right.
Like if black plays it now, white's going to play an Atari, and black doesn't get the eye in the center. So if black makes the eye in the center, then white can play here and get rid of that eye on the side. So this is dead. It's a beautiful tesuji. So the question is, did Zero make a mistake? Because this exchange here has just lost something like 10 points. Well, I'm sorry, at least 5 points. Well, it's usually 6 or 7 points.
It's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points, and there's and what you're saying is that it's not only the 5 or 6 points or whatever, but it's also if it's meaning, right? I mean, if there's some other meaning to it, then you might be able to justify it. But you're saying, or is this a trick thing? You actually think there is a point to it?
Yeah, you caught me there, didn't you?
Oh man, I stepped right in it, didn't I?
Yeah, and I think this actually, Master didn't see it coming, maybe. And so this is where I'm going to start playing my game of guessing, trying to read Master's mind, because as you know, I don't have the network data, so I don't really know. But the way Master starts playing after this, I get the feeling it looks very much like the way it was playing when it was defeating all those human players.
Back in January.
Yeah. And so I get the feeling that it's happy about how the game is proceeding. And if we assume this right side area, the upper right corner area, is completely white's territory, then I would agree with Master. But it turns out it wasn't like that. So first of all, let's look at what's happening here in the center. There's the question of, in the game, black just gave that side away. So what happens if black plays here? It turns out white has, for instance, white would probably start with this move, just to set up a double Atari here, or this one. So this would be a disaster for black, because black's side group would be in jeopardy, and the lower side group, and it would just be bad for black.
It's pretty cool, though.
Yeah. So black just seems to be throwing the side group away, and those 5 stones are dead. But black's going to find a way to reuse them. So you'll be able to see that in about 30 moves now. So black starts with this.
It's recycling. It's a black's recycling program.
Well, like, yeah, it's sort of different. Different from the way I was seeing the KJ version recycling stones. Like it was starting by playing a Kikashi, and then it was using it over and over again.
I remember that. That's right.
Yeah, but in this game, it looks like it looks almost like Zero started with a mistake. But it turns out, like, this looked like a mistake, but it turns out that it had it already had in its mind, it already had an idea of how to live in the upper right corner. And it's really very unusual shape. But when black plays here, for the time being, the lower side is still bigger. So like the upper right corner, when black does move there, it's going to be about 15 points. But that's like the final fight before the end game. It's not big enough to be playing it before the lower side. And so this jump is, as I was saying earlier in this game, this jump is going to be causing Master trouble. It's one of the moves that's going to be causing Master troubles every time it gets into this position. And it does get into this position a few times. Just in the 20 games. I think they indicated that there's actually something like 100 games. Is that what they were saying?
I think that's right. Yeah.
But all we have for the time being is 20 games. So I'm talking when I'm saying it played it 5 times, or I'm saying something like that. I'm usually talking about just the 20 games. So that's something that might change in the future if they release more games.
Right.
So black peeps here, and we can see black's threatening to make a bamboo joint there in the center. And so this is really big. With all those stones, that kind of a wall that black has on the right, this is going to be trouble for white. So now it's really interesting. The players are sort of bouncing back and forth between the corner and the lower side fight. And this is something that I don't think human players would do. But as far as AlphaGo is concerned, I think that the two areas are probably about the same size. So it seems to be saying that it's okay for them to be moving back and forth between the lower side fight and what's happening here in the corner. And there is a connection there. Like white is playing this forcing move, but it turns out it then decides the corner is bigger. So they're sort of going back and forth, trying to decide between the corner and the side. And in a strange way, it sort of makes sense. It's very, yeah. And again, you can see that white's threatening to escape with A, but black plays this forcing move first. It's not really necessary. But as this develops, we see that coal in the corner has magically disappeared. And black has gotten something on the side. And so black has profited locally. But white's gain is that the corner is now a live shape.
So like the smallest live shape that possible, though. Good Lord.
Almost no territory at all. And white ends with this move. And so here, I've got also the marks on the board. That's because I'm going to be talking about territory.
Jeez, what is the count? What is the score?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about now.
Oh, man.
So white is, this is where I'm saying that master is playing in a pattern that looks very similar to when it had a winning game against humans, and it was just sort of closing the shop and just making it simple. So this final move that white has just played is a very big move, and it has the added value of settling that white group on the lower left corner. And we're going to count territory. So first of all, I'm going to say that maybe master was assuming that black would play at A and white plays at B. So we're starting with by assuming that the upper right area is white's territory. And that's about 43 points, that territory.
Upper right?
Yeah. And then there's 5 points at the territory at C.
Okay.
And white has about 10 points at D. So that takes it to 48. I mean 58, right?
58, yeah, 58. 40, 50, 48. Yeah, 58.
Yeah, 48, 58. Yeah. And then that lower right corner is probably a point or so. So I'm going to call it 60.
Okay.
And at G, black has this territory. It's sort of a territory. Oh, let's do it in order. Let's say F is 8 points. And then this G point the area is sort of hard to count, but I'm going to call it 28 points. So
28, not 26, not 30, yeah. 28.
It's less than 30, I think. We're assuming that black's going to take 3 stones in the lower right corner, and white takes 2 stones, and that's what. And we're going to call that whole section there just 1 or 2 points per white.
Sure.
And so that means that if white plays, let's just add one more mark. If white plays this point, then if we're assuming that exchange where black takes 3 stones and white takes 2 stones, white's going to be able to play this stone, this mark point, and squeeze black there. So we have to get an average between white squeeze and black making the territory. And so that area was 14 points, and then I add something like 14 points for the lower side, which is also potentially a race to capture. So there's potential that black would have to be putting in 2 or 3 stones there. So let's see, I was saying 8 points and 28 points, that's 36. And then the upper side, I and H, H and I, they sort of add up to about 15 points.
Right.
Like they're both sort of hard to count areas, but if we're saying black plays at A and white plays at B, then that area just there in the side is 6 points. And then black has some extra points with captured stones in the center. So I'm going to call those two territories 15 points and say that black has something close to 50 points.
50
so
points.
Black's 10 points behind.
10 points behind plus Comey.
Yeah, plus Comey. And black has to catch up in the center or maybe on the left side. It's not going to be enough.
Right. And just before you go on, I just want to remind folks that counting exercise that Michael just went through, it's something that, honestly, I think a lot of people just sort of look and say, and they just sort of roughly guess. And, I think it's really an important point that in terms of understanding the game, because as I think we're about to see here, I think it's gonna drive the upcoming moves.
It's going to serve as an explanation of what the score is after a few moves,
right?
When black does erase the upper right corner. But I would say that I chose what I think is the ideal position to be doing this exercise of counting the score. It's possible to make the mistake of doing it too much earlier in the game.
Right.
Like in the early parts of the game, it's okay to estimate a little bit.
Right. But especially at a key point like this, where you can really win or lose a game right now. Right now,
yeah. Like where it looks like we're about to enter the end game, and maybe if I was playing a game, if I hadn't had time to read out the upper right corner, maybe I wouldn't be sure whether I had something there or not if I was black.
Sure.
And so I would do this count and say just playing at A and allowing white B is not good enough. And then I would maybe concentrate my my thoughts on what to do in the upper right corner. That could be one way my thought processes would work to find a move in the upper right corner.
And actually, you raise another point, which is that you're probably at this point of the game, time would be a factor, and so you really want to use your time effectively as well. So, all right, so you've kind of set the stage here.
Yeah, I would use the rest of my time to try to find something in the upper right corner.
So what happens? What happens?
It doesn't really look like this is going to work. This is what Zero did. And the game variation is pretty exciting too, in which white plays here. But let's go into this one first. Like this is, for the time being, black is looking at that attachment on the second line right here. So white has to do something to stop that. And so that's why we're seeing white playing either here or playing here. These look like the two moves that look pretty feasible. And this move usually works. Like if black plays here, white plays here. And if black plays, let's just add, okay, if black plays here, there's not going to be enough room in the corner. This actually, I won't go into this variation. There's something that, why don't I? There's something that happens
what
here.
The heck?
Yeah, what the heck? There's something that happens here, but it's not really going to be very good for black. Like there's this and this. And, surprisingly enough, it does live.
Yeah.
But it's going to be it's not going to be very pretty.
This
is not going to be pretty.
So.
Because black can't let this white stone escape to the right, so black has
he's going to lose something on the other side.
And, as that black group in the center there, that clump of 6 stones, if white gets to take those off the board, there's going to be that ko there. This is actually a variation that I thought would just be confusing for people, so I took it out. But I put it back in again.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's fun. Okay. It's good. Yeah.
So this would it would be too much trouble, and black would not be gaining enough in this variation.
It looks tempting, though, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a tessuji. There was a professional game in ancient Japan several hundred years ago, in which someone used something like actually crawled further along the side of the board. And his opponent was so happy about that because the person who crawled on the first line ended up losing after all. Oh, no. And so his opponent was so happy about that is that he made hundreds of copies of that game.
Oh, he did.
Yes. And I'm sorry, I forget the names of some of our history people will probably come up with names for those people because they were both famous players.
So, but he made hundreds of copies of this game, but he wasn't like he went to the Xerox. I mean, this was a time when that was actually a project to make copies. Wow.
Well, someone who knows their history will probably be able to give you the full story.
All right, in the comments, people. I want to see it in the comments.
We'll look forward to that. So let's say white plays here, black plays here, and so I just showed you this move doesn't really work. Black's going to play here.
Yeah. That's I
so
that looks
that
promising.
black stone on the second line is coming into play here, because white has to go straight down. Like if white plays the Tari here, let's do that one. Then white has 2 cutting points that white cannot save.
Yeah.
So white plays here. Now black. We can see black has made use of the move. It's not quite over yet. Like you think that the corner and the cut on the fourth line are miai, right?
That's what I mean. Again, just at a quick look, yes.
And I wasn't quite convinced, so I'm going to try again with white with this move and cutting here. Black has only 1 eye.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
It's
I wouldn't want to try and read that out in time trouble, but okay.
It's going to get bad for white though, because black's going to extend liberties here, and this cut here is forcing because black's threatening to make life, and then black's going to play here. Now this is going to be trouble for white's outside.
Oh my God!
So that cut, and I think the dog is wanting to get down. So let's just say hello.
Hello, Butch. How's it going? What are you doing to me? Put me down.
And let's see. So the fight continues. I tried all sorts of stuff here. It doesn't look like white can actually break through. So we're gonna have this. White has extended liberties a little bit, and this is the key point. So white's throw-in at A was the key point. Okay, that's where I put the A. White's throw-in at A was the key point in this semi to reduce black's liberties. And white's actually, this is an advantageous ko for white. So white's going to, it's a 2-step ko. But black's just going to play 3 endgame moves. Like, it's no problem. It was a 2-step ko for white, and it would be a yosei ko for black. Like at this point, black needs 1 more move to make it a direct ko. And so it was an advantageous ko for white, but it was also a ko in which white needed to add these 3 stones. And black gets all these moves in the center of the board. And actually, when I count that white territory, it's a little bit smaller than it was before. It's not thrown. Usually when black plays inside there, the corner territory gets bigger, but since white was forced to play so many stones inside there, it's actually going to be smaller.
Wow. So
white's gain in territory was minimal, and black has gained so much in the center. Like black's got that 10 points. This 10 points here, why don't I mark it? Is actually, it's bigger because it gets rid of the potential of semi on the lower side, so it's really big. So this is just a very easy win for black. It would be much worse than the game. And so, and I'm pretty sure that they more or less worked that out. I think it was just a hidden variation in the game, and they decided that this is not working. And it's much worse than the game when black plays this, and it's going to get a bigger life. Like at this point, if white just connects on the 4th line, that's an ideal, it's an 8-point corner territory for black.
Huge. That's almost 20-point swing, right?
Much more than 20 points.
Much more than 20 points.
Like the game was more like 20 points.
Okay.
And the game white plays here, and black plays the hane. And again, you would think that white might be able to kill with this. This is usually a killing tessuji.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It doesn't work.
But it's the same thing. This move eventually is forcing.
Man, it's just the same weakness just keeps coming up.
Still using that kosumi on the 2nd line. So white has to answer here, and black can easily live. So this would be worse than
the game. Wow.
Worse for white. And so white just meekly allows black to live. There's no choice now. But I think, I really think that maybe Master missed this. Now, living in the corner, well, it just the way it was playing before, it was looking like Master thought it was ahead. It just resembled the way it was playing in that 60-game series against humans. when it was winning the games. So I might be wrong, but that's the feeling I get from looking at the way Master was playing.
So is there a move it should have taken? I mean, did it miss a move, or is it a timing thing, or what?
Well, if that maybe Black was ahead already. If Black has the potential to live in this corner, maybe Black was. But then if I was playing with White, I would be trying something more aggressive on the lower side fight. So that lower side, that fight on the lower side was happening before Black jumped into the upper right corner.
I see.
And White was sort of backing off a little bit, just playing a relatively safe version and giving Black some territory on the lower side and saying that was okay for White. And I get the feeling that this really resembled the way Master was beating all those human players. So I was assuming that Master thought maybe it was winning. But of course, we have to ask Master. Master might tell us that it had a low winning percentage already.
Right.
And this shape in the upper right corner, it's a 20-point gain for Black. So like if White were to play 2 moves in a row in the upper right corner, that would be a difference of 20 points compared to this position. But we have to take into account the fact that Black doesn't get to play the forcing move A for White B that I was talking about earlier. Like if the upper right corner had been White's territory, Black would have been able to force with that. And so it's more like more than 15 points, more like closer to 15 points and less than 20 points. But still, at this point of the game, it's huge. Like that was the 15 points that Black needed to get in the center or the left side in order to catch up.
Right.
And even if White plays first in the center, Black's still going to get something in the center. It's obviously going to be more Black's territory than White's territory. So that's going to be Black's winning margin.
Wow.
The extra points Black gets in the center and the left side. And just take it a bit further. White played that. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. This move here. This was a big move. So White did play. We can say White did play first in the center. So White's starting to make some territory there. But of course, Black has some territory in the center too. And so this is a very straightforward. Okay, yeah. Now this is where I sort of think that maybe Zero is baiting Master. It's sort of, it doesn't need to play this move on the first line. It's probably better for Black to be doing something like this on the left. This is probably a better move. But like it's just saying, it's sort of putting pressure on the White group by taking away eyes potentially. And it's also making it easier for Black to make 2 eyes by playing another move on the upper side. So it's kind of a super safe move. But I would have played this side.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's saying I can play here and still I can beat you, because Black has a fairly sizable lead at this point. Like it's not a real crash, but Black's going to be about 10 points ahead on the board. So they start playing this ko, and of course White cannot fight the ko all the way. This fight in the center is sort of interesting because this is a geta, and the Black stone cannot escape yet. But when Black pushes here, maybe I should add a variation here.
Yeah, show me, because I'm
variation
not quite...
2. So like when White plays here, if Black tries to escape, this is just going to be bad. It can't escape.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so Black pushes through here. Now if White answers that, Black's going to be able to play here and thread the cut. White has to answer.
That is nasty. Oh, that's terrible.
So it's not really working for White. So when instead White answers in the center. So Black got to get rid of that White territory.
Man, it's just that territories just sort of appear and disappear.
Yeah, well, it was sort of an even trade. So after this, actually, it was an unusual game in that most of the end game was played in a rather straightforward fashion. Like they didn't go crazy until the very end. Let's see if I can find where they went crazy.
Yes,
but it was just Master that did sort of all sorts of stupid stuff at the end. But it was already close to about 10 points on the board. This is much later in the game. The end game has been very straightforward. And oh yeah, the end game, and they're just finishing the game here. And so this is going to be about 10 points on the board, before Komi, that is, for black. And they're just finishing the game, and then suddenly Master is going to start playing inside black's territory. So that's the point where the game got a bit, like you can see it already starting to happen, sort of. All these forcing moves. This is really bad.
Weird.
And this is weird. And that was another loss. So White's giving up something like 3 or 4 points to lose by something more like, I think it was 3 3/4, so it would be 14 points or 15 points or something like that on the board, before Komi, that is. So 6.5 or 7.5 points. So finally, at the end, it resigns. You can see actually Zero is playing inside its own territory here. That's Zero. When they start giving away points, Zero isn't quite as effective as Master, actually. Like Master will just jump into Ataris and stuff like that, but Zero usually just gives away 1 point at a time. So when
it's more advanced.
Yeah. Well, you could say it's more advanced. It's not as good at giving away points. So when Master really gets serious about doing that, Master really goes ahead.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's no way Zero can catch up in that.
Really interesting game, especially in terms of sort of the key point that you showed us, where it just really kind of that whole upper right hand corner. I guess I could have seen that there was something in there, but I mean, it's really well played.
Yeah, well, just to say that I think that Zero would have no other reason to play this move unless it had already had that variation ready. Like this move, this exchange, like if it was, I think I'm safe in saying that Zero is probably the strongest player, unless it's the KJ version. I don't really know. Like the KJ version is pretty good too, but a player of this level should not be missing this move. It's a beautiful, exquisite Tezuji. But Black should have seen that coming. So in order for Zero to play this move, it must have had that this move ready, which means that's something that I think would be I would not be able to see so far in the future of the game to have this, and it's a 15-point move. It's only a 15-point game, so it's something that. Even if I have it ready, it's something that's going to be coming much later in the game. So Black has to have the whole game sequence here as a possibility in which Black will be playing this much later in the game, like it's 30 moves later. And so it's just not the local reading it. Black has to set it up in the entire game position too. So that would be, I think I should say it would be beyond me. And so it's pretty impressive. As far as
and just one other question: does White have? Just looking real quickly, I mean, does White have any better response? He's got to play. He's got to prevent the connect out, and so it doesn't really change anything on that upper side. I mean,
in this fight on the lower side, what was happening looked pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
I might have tried something unreasonable. So maybe this final move here. Where White takes the lower left corner. That would, maybe White could have played it here, but then of course this would also have been a huge move. Like Black might even push through here once, and White has a very thin position here. If White connects, then there's a cutting move here. Well, Black would probably just play like this, and you can see that White has a cutting point there on the second line. It's a very awkward position. So this is probably not very good for White either. And so I can't really find a good point where White would be able to avoid it.
Wow.
So it's very masterful control of the game. Maybe I shouldn't be using that word.
I was gonna say I was just gonna go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Because it's zero after all. Yeah.
I was gonna say it was, it's a masterful, but it's zero, masterful.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
we're gonna let that go. We're gonna let that go. A really, really great game, and just really terrific analysis, Michael. I will join with a lot of our viewers in just really appreciating that. A lot of people have been looking at these games, but I will say, as somebody who just looked at the games, it was just clearly really complicated. So really appreciate and I don't think people can have too many variations. So appreciate all that as well. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Michael, and just appreciate everybody for watching. All your comments, we really like those. Keep those coming. And I'll just wrap up by saying thanks again to all of our AGA members. And again, if you'd like to support this content as well, please consider joining the American Go Association, usgo.org. And again, thanks for watching.